The opinions and views expressed in the following presentation do not necessarily reflect those of GameCon Radio or its affiliates.
Banshee's Lair, Visionary Talk Radio on GameConRadio.com. We rock your world. Welcome to Mo Banshee's Lair, Visionary Talk Radio on GameConRadio.com. We rock your game. Tonight we're going to rock your world with a lovely lady who's waiting on the side, Pat Priest, who was the ugly cousin in the Munsters series of the 1960s, and also was in a movie with Elvis Presley. And tonight is Elvis Presley. It would have been his 78th birthday. Happy birthday to the king. And I don't mean Jesus, I mean, you know, Elvis Presley. Before I bring Pat on, I just want to remind everybody that we're in the dead of winter, and there are a lot of animals being dumped in shelters. A lot of older animals are being given up because, of course, just like old people, things break down and they need help and they need medicine, and people are having some trouble, you know, with finances, and they feel that they can't spend money. That's our guest. Don't worry about it, guys. They're afraid to spend money on their animals, so these poor animals are being dumped. And obviously the shelters are so full right now, between animals displaced by natural disasters, animals being displaced because their families can't afford to take care of them anymore, and then animals being displaced because of, in Old Bridge, New Jersey, this week, some backyard breeder had a bunch of puppies that had to be rescued. It's unacceptable, but please, people, if you can, buy a $5 bag of cat food or dog food and maybe a small box of litter. Please drop it off at your local shelters. If you can't have an animal but you like animals and want to help out, maybe you could offer to volunteer at your local shelter and help out the animals, walk the dogs, help maintain the animals, so maybe they don't have to put them to sleep as fast. The reality is that the shelters only have so much money to work with, and you can't save them all, but we can try to help as many as we can. And if you don't have a local shelter, as Lady A in our chat room just posted, she doesn't have a local shelter, donate $10 a month to the ASPCA. They are a wonderful group. The New Jersey SPCA is incredible. I cannot say enough about Captain Yoakum and the rest of the team. They have saved countless animals, and they try so hard to you know, take care of the animals, but it is getting really rough. The other thing is, it's winter. If you see an animal in trouble, if you see an animal being left out in the elements, they're not rubber, they're not weatherproof, and I don't care. People say, well, they have fur. Well, that's ignorance talking. Call the authorities, report them, and if they don't want to do anything, call your local newspaper. They love a good humanity type story. They love it when people get all schmaltzy over those poor animals. So call your local paper and say, look, I've called, I've tried to get this animal help, and nobody wants to hear nothing. Because you know, it's just really sad. The other thing is ice. please, people, watch your children on ice. You know, they go to the ponds thinking, oh my God, it's nice and hard, I'm going to go play on the ice, and the next thing you know, you've got something going on and a child missing. Teenagers go and, you know, they think, well, I'll be okay. They get under the ice, they get cold, they can't find the hole they went under. Please, people, watch your children with ice and ponds and water. During the summer, water will kill them. During the winter, ice and water will kill them. So please be careful with your children and ice. As I said, you know, this is our first show for the year. We took a couple of weeks off for the holidays to be with family, and everybody, you know, had wonderful holidays. I hope everybody had wonderful holidays. And I'm over the moon to have our guest on tonight. Our guest is Pat Priest, who is possibly responsible for more boys buying National Graphic or anything else. I mean, the dreams that some young boys had in the 60s concerning this lovely lady. And, you know, it boggles the mind because she was absolutely gorgeous. She is still absolutely gorgeous. And I want to welcome her to the show tonight. Pat Priest, welcome to my lair.
Oh, thank you, Mo. I'm delighted to be there. And I've got to tell you, in hearing your first little entry about the animals, I am a complete, total animal lover. I mean, if I see dogs wandering along the highway, I will pick them up. I will take them to the shelter. My kitty is a little wild animal that came on my patio and was wild for in the winter, starving, skin and bones, matted hair, and was wild. I put food out there. It took me a year to tame her, and she is the most precious pet I have. So I can't say enough about taking care of animals.
Yeah, I think that if we are going to do anything about becoming better people, we need to start taking care of the children and the animals because they can't defend themselves.
Do you know what, Mo? I have always judged, and even when I was dating and way back in my youth, and still today, judge people by the way they treat their animals.
Yep, me too.
And that's a really good indication of if they abuse animals or they're mean to animals, they're mean, abusive people.
Yes, they are. Yeah, I am the same way.
Yep. Well, listen, another thing I wanted to say to you, when you said all these young fellows, I was their heartthrob. Well, I hope they don't see me now. I'm 76 years old. I'm not. Listen, I couldn't even be a heartthrob in a senior citizen center.
Oh yeah, but, you are.
You know, and it makes me feel good when I go out periodically, and I do memorabilia shows, signing autographs, and you know, we'll get some little kid, and you'll see him come up to my table, and he'll kind of stand off at side. They're a little afraid to approach you. And then finally he comes up and he looks at me and he looks at the pictures and he says, "Are you Marilyn?" And I'll say, "Yes, I'm Marilyn." "Well, you don't look like her." And I said, "Well, would you believe me if I said I was Marilyn's grandma?" "Yes." I said, "Okay, I'm Marilyn's grandma, and this is my granddaughter, Marilyn," her pictures. Because, of course, you know, when you go out to do these shows, you know, they don't want to get a picture of an old lady. They want the way you looked when you did the show.
But I got some news for you. Those boys that were looking at you, they weren't all that younger than you, and they're your age now, and so you're still the hottest tamale on that dish, man.
Oh, well, how kind of you to say that. That makes me feel good. I'm just about 5 weeks down from having a hip replacement.
I know.
But doing great, doing absolutely great. Best thing I ever did. Was like it never happened.
Oh, you know, we were talking on the phone, and that's great. You heal fast. You know, you bounce back. That's just wonderful.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your mother was the treasurer, secretary of the treasurer.
Treasurer. You were right the first time. Treasurer of the United States. Yes, she was during the Eisenhower administration.
Old Dyke.
And she'd been in politics ever since she was about 18 years old. You know, started out in a little, we were from Utah and started out in a little town in Utah. And, you know, she held about every little position she could politically within the party. Mm-hmm. And then she was vice chairman of the Republican Party during Eisenhower's campaign and in charge of all the women's divisions across the United States. And as a result of that, he appointed her treasurer, which really changed my life. I was 16 at the time. Mm-hmm. And, of course, I had to be uprooted from school.
Right.
High school. And, you know, a boyfriend. And that was devastating. I don't care what my mother was. I didn't want to go. It was devastating.
I've watched a video of your mother explaining her job. It was some documentary type thing, and some watch, like Rolex watch or something, had a thing where they would interview politicians.
Oh yes,
and stuff.
I've seen that.
She was amazing, a lovely lady, but she was very articulate, and she seemed to be extremely versed. She knew her job inside and out, man.
Well, and it's interesting because when she, became, political in the point of her job as treasurer, that was back in 70... Oh, no, not the 70. It was back in the
53 to 61.
53. I was just going to say 53. And, women at that time were not, doing that much in politics.
No.
And especially she was in the state of Utah. Mm-hmm. And at that time, it was a male chauvinist state. Mm-hmm. Basically, but she worked her way up, and it was wonderful. And ultimately, as devastated as I was, it was kind of a turning point in my life because that's where I got my start in television on a local channel there in Washington, D.C. And, of course, my mother being, in the government opened up a lot of opportunities for me. Mm-hmm. And, for me and my sister and brother. So it was a wonderful time for us.
Let me ask you, did you, go to debutante balls and things because of her place in...
I did.
Oh, wow.
And, I was a debutante. I came out in Washington, D.C., and also in New York. Mm-hmm. But at that time, my opinion, of course, coming from a little town in Utah, of a debutante was in introducing a girl to society and saying, my daughter's 18, now she can date.
Yeah.
And I said...
Hey, Mary, you're quick.
Yeah, and I said, oh, wait a minute. And I didn't want to do it. I didn't want it. I kept saying to my mother, give me the money and let me go to Europe. If I haven't had a date before I'm 18, there's something wrong with me. Mm-hmm. And Mother kept saying, no, we have to do it. I'm in government. This is the thing to do and so on. So I did it.
You did this. You did all this. You were the dutiful daughter. You played the politics, which a good. When you have a family, everybody does their part to make sure the family succeeds.
That is right.
Yeah, and that's something that I think has been thrown away somewhere. It's kind of families are all for themselves now. But you understood your mother was in a very, very a powerful position, a delicate position. So you did your job. You behaved well. You became a debutante. When did the modeling and acting start happening?
Well, actually, the acting started more or less. It all started when we lived in Utah. And we belonged to the Mormon Church, and they had what they called once a year road shows, and there would be like 7 or 8 churches, and they would all be, they'd have a director in each one, and they each could pick a theme, and they had 15 minutes. And the show would go on at one church, and then they'd have, so many minutes to get to the next, and so many minutes to set up the scenery, and they were judged on all of that. So if you went to one church, you saw probably 7 or 8 road shows. And my mother was in charge at our church of the road show. And she wrote it, and she was directing it, and she needed a 5-minute curtain, or a 3-minute curtain act in front of the curtain while they were setting up the scenery. So she came up with the bright idea that I would pantomime a record. But it just wasn't kind of an ordinary record. It was Beatrice Kay, who was an old British comedic singer. And it was a very funny song called Hooray, Hooray, I'm Going Away with the Man in the Little White Coat. And, of course, I came out, I had a hat with a bird on a spring on the top, and I was acting like I was nuts and lip-syncing it perfectly. Because Mother had worked with me and with me and taught me, how to do it. Well, of course, halfway through the record, the woman gets hysterical and she starts laughing. And this is all on the record. And I start to do the laughing, right along with the lip sync. And I'm rolling on the floor and everything. And then at the end, 2 guys come in white coats and carry me off.
Right.
Well, apparently it became so successful. Everyone in the audience, when I started laughing and falling on the floor and doing all sorts of funny things, laughing, the whole audience started laughing. And when I was through, the next thing I knew, there was a man who had a local television show in Salt Lake City, and he invited me to come on his show and do. Well, I only had 1 number, so then I had to get up some more numbers, and so that's how I started. And I used to do them at school assemblies, and I used to go in once a week to this television show. And then when we moved to Washington, in my senior year of high school, there was a woman she was leading the local TV, the old Dumont network.
Right.
And she was on with a man, and they were on from 5 to 6 every day. And they did record pantomimes, and then she did the weather and anything pertaining to a woman. And she was leading. I was a senior in high school. And my boyfriend at the time, he said, why don't you go down and audition? I went, oh, no, I can't. He said, yeah, go down and audition. What is it going to hurt? Well, I did, and I got it. So then they adjusted my schedule at a high school so that I could have all my classes and be through at once so I could get into the studio, because in those days you had to make up your own cue cards. You had to get all your own information off the wire service, for the show and what you were going to do. So, and then we went on, and I did that for 2 years. And then, of course, I married a naval officer, and we were transferred out to California, Northern California, and I started doing little theater work then, and worked in the Bay Area at 3 different little theaters, and then we were transferred back to Norfolk, Virginia. And so I started doing little theater there, and then I started doing some local commercials because I didn't realize at the time that girls with Southern accents, they didn't want them on the air and doing commercials if you had a Southern accent. Well, I didn't.
Why not?
I don't know. Maybe just too hard to understand, or I don't know why. They just didn't. And maybe like, y'all come down here and buy this cereal?
I
don't know why.
I've lived around the whole country, and the one accent that kind of threw me was Texas. I had a friend there, and it sounded like you were winding her up when she talked. I think, I'm like, what the, so maybe that was it. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I ended up with about 5 commercial accounts. Local, the drugstore and the cleaners, the big cleaner chain, and so on and so forth. And so then I did that for 2 years. And then we were transferred back out to Southern California. And that's when I got an agent.
Oh.
And
did you pick the agent, or did they find you? Because really, you weren't hard on the eyes.
No, I was the one that picked the agent. And, well, it wasn't agents are not easy to get.
No.
So, she was an older lady, very well known in Hollywood at the time, and she only had 4 clients. And well, she got me the Munsters and everything, but then I worked a lot. I did a lot of TV commercials. That's what I really started in, because I was young. I was a good young mother type. And my very first commercial, which got me into the union, was a Kellogg Rice Krispies.
Very wholesome.
Yeah, and that was, 50 years ago. And that was the first. And then, of course, then I started doing little bit parts on, lots of shows. And, I worked a lot. And then the gal who was doing the Munsters, she was from New York, Beverly Owen. And she had done the first 13 episodes and cried all the time when she wasn't on the screen, because she was so unhappy because her boyfriend was in New York. And she wanted to go back to New York and be with her boyfriend. And so after 13 weeks, they let her out of her contract.
Okay.
And so then they were testing girls. And the day I tested, they tested 5 of us, each individually. And this was on a Wednesday. They called me up on Thursday to tell me I'd gotten a part. I signed the contract on Friday and started work on Monday.
I'm going to take a break.
On that week. She left on that weekend. I have never met her. I have never seen her.
We're going to take a break.
I've never even talked to her. I would love to.
Okay. We're going to take a break and pick this up right where we... okay. He's not here. Hang on. The check isn't here. Sorry. All right. We're just going to keep going. Okay. All right. So, you never met her. She was just miserable from the get-go. Because her boyfriend was away. Okay, the tech is here. We're going to go to break, and I forget what the first song is we're going to play. What's Elvis Presley, and it's from the movie you did with Elvis Presley, Easy Come, Easy Go. I'm not sure.
Okay.
You won't hear it, and I won't hear it, but when I send you the copy of the show tonight, you will definitely hear it.
Oh, wonderful. And, I would love to have it. Great.
Yeah, I specifically picked music that you were involved in for tonight.
Well, bless your heart. Thank you.
Okay, we'll be right back with our guest, Pat Priest, and we'll be talking about everything from Munsters to Elvis Presley. And this is GameCon Radio. We'll be right back.
Just a reminder, guys, all our talk show hosts here at GameCon Radio volunteer their time, but you can always show your appreciation. Click on the tip jar and give them a little love. I'm sure maybe your predictions will come out a little bit better. And that's how we roll here at GameCon Radio. We rock your game and your paranormal.
Listening to GameCon Radio.
Welcome back to Mo Banshee's Lair, Visionary Talk Radio on GameConRadio.com, rocking your world. I want to also draw attention to all the other incredible shows that are on GameCon Radio, and I'm going to go through the schedule. Mondays, Dead End with DJ Deadeye, and On the Prowl with DJ Barefoot. And Tuesdays, yours truly, Mo Banshee's Lair, Visionary Talk Radio. If you're interested, I'm interested. And on Wednesday, the Aussie Barbecue with DJ Greenback is coming back. And then Nothing But the Blues with Captain Steve, and Paranormal Python with Annette Munich, and Highway of Light with Deadeye again. Thursday, Jurassic Park with Doc Stan. Another Australian show is coming back, Aussie Music and Madness. And on Fridays, we have Schizophrenic with Blondie. And then Top 20 Countdown with DJ Barefoot. And on Saturday, My Generation with Captain Steve's. We have all kinds of music, all kinds of great stuff going, great shows, and a great feed for music all the time, 24/7. So when you're browsing around looking at stuff, you might want to just leave it on GameCon Radio and listen to some of the best music, rock, blues, jazz, everything. We've got it all. And if you ever want to find me and I'm not here, you can find me on my site, www.asylumsgate.com. It is one of the original sites dedicated to unexplained phenomena. I am always there. My team is always there. If you know somebody who needs help, we're there to help. That's our job, and we're there to teach and get all the mystery out of it. There's nothing paranormal. It's just not understood yet. So that's where you can find me, asylumsgate.com. Our guest, Pat Priest, I always tell my listeners, Pat, if you could hear what was going on during the commercial, that would make a show all on itself.
Isn't that the truth? It's called the outtakes.
Yes, the outtakes. You know, we're talking about children, and she says, "Oh, do you have children?" And it turns out we have children, you know, not far from each other's age brackets and all, and you know, life goes on. You know,
yes,
we
yes,
have lives, and they're very, very similar. Your body of work, that's what I wanted to get back to before the Munsters. Everybody knows you from the Munsters. That was kind of your breakout thing.
That was.
This is The Lieutenant, a TV series in 1963. You were on that. The Jack Benny program, which you didn't get bigger than Jack Benny back then. In 1964, Looking for Love. You were on Valentine's Day, another series. Quick Before It Melts, you were on that. Then Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea with, what was his name? You know who I'm talking about.
Yes,
David
I do.
He was there. And, oh, God, I can't think of his name.
Was it Dennis? I was trying to think of the fellow that played Maya.
Yeah,
My husband.
just bring it up because I really don't want to. Richard Basehart. Richard Basehart.
Basehart, yes.
What an incredible actor. What was it like to work with Richard Basehart?
Well, actually, I didn't work with him. I worked with, I think it was Denny Miller. I'm not, no, it wasn't. Oh, gosh. I can see him. I can't think of his name.
That's okay.
And we were scientists on a sub beneath the sea, and we were eaten alive by plankton.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Every week it was another disaster, and
yes.
the ship had, the Sea View had to save humanity.
Yes.
Then you were on My Favorite Martian with Ray Walston.
I was, and that was fun. I enjoyed that. That was great. I was kind of like a girlfriend, not of Ray. What was the name of the other fellow with him?
Bixby. Bill Bixby.
Bill Bixby, right. Bill Bixby. I was playing his girlfriend. Mm-hmm. And this particular episode. And, no, see, I did a Mary Tyler Moore, and I played Betty White's sister.
Death Valley Days you were on? Twice you were on that?
Yes, I did a couple Red Skelton shows. I did Bob Hope. I worked a lot.
Yes, you
Not
did.
that I had, really big parts, but I worked a lot. Mm-hmm. And that's, how I eventually got to, test for the Munsters.
Okay, and you got the girl that was, she did the first 13, Owen. She did the first...
Beverly
Owen did the first 13, and she was just so, I guess, heartsick from her boyfriend not being there and all, that they finally, okay, you're out, but you came right in on Monday, right? It was like, okay, pack your bags,
yes.
You're in.
Yeah, that was exactly it. I signed a contract on Friday and started work on Monday. And I never met her, never saw her. She lives in New York. I would love to because, we shared a common experience. And, I keep thinking, well, maybe someday someone on a show will surprise me and bring her on, which would be a surprise.
Yeah.
But
let me ask. They're asking in the chat room for some gossip from the Munsters. What's his name? Al, the one who played
Al Lewis. Al Lewis.
I knew some people who knew him, and he was not above pinching a pretty girl in the arse. How was he to work with?
Oh, he was wonderful. He was, Al was an old vaudevillian. Mm-hmm. And he was totally harmless. He was a real cut-up all the time. He was my mentor. Mm-hmm. I loved Al. In fact, both Al and Fred, but Al more so. And in fact, just 2 days ago, I talked to Al's widow. Oh. She now lives in Oakland, California, and she's just written a book called My Life with a Munster. Oh. And it hasn't been published yet. It's just going to the publishers. And so it was nice catching up with Karen and talking with her and because we knew one another. And I kept, out of everyone, I kept in touch with Al more so than anyone. And also Butch. We would do shows, Little Eddie, Butch Patrick, and we would do shows together. Yeah. Periodically. And of course then Grandpa died, and it's just Butch and I. Uh-huh. And we've got a couple shows coming up, one in March and one in April.
You're going to Pittsburgh. When is that?
Pittsburgh is in March.
Right.
And April is Kansas City, and July is Butler, Pennsylvania. Cool. The Monster Bash.
Cool. Let's talk about that, Cass, because The reigning queen king of the TV shows back then was the Addams Family. And, something had to be done about that. So they created the Munsters. Instead of calling them the Monsters, they gave them the Munsters name.
Exactly.
And it was an all-American family, and they actually were probably one of the least dysfunctional families on television at the time.
You know what? Absolutely. We were a little bit different, but we were a functional family.
Right.
We had Uncle Herman went to work, Grandpa went to work, Aunt Lily was a stay-at-home mom. Eddie and I, Eddie and I went to school, and, we all had our meals together, and we all did family things together. And now, when I go out and do these shows, people will come up to me and say, the shows in the 60s are the only shows that they'll let their children watch. Right. And they let them watch the Munsters because there was nothing scary, nothing violent. Mm-hmm. It was funny. It was like a cartoon.
It was. I was out in California, and John Aston was being interviewed by somebody out there. And,
he's wonderful.
Years and years ago this was. And he said, you realize that the Addams Family was so nonviolent that they protested when they found out dragons in fairy tale books were being killed. He says, and that was the way these shows were. Not even a dragon should be hurt.
Oh no! Well, we had the dragon, our Spot,
right?
Our dragon that lived under the stairs, in the house.
Fred Gwynn, a very private man. Tragedy: a son drowned, a young son. Very private man, and yet I don't know. He had a funny body and face that I think he always wanted to be Marlon Brando, maybe, but when he cut up and he did goofy things with his face like Car 54 and that kind of thing, he just became almost a comedian. And then he gets this part as the Munster. How was he to work with?
Well, Fred was wonderful to work with. Fred was a genius, truly a genius. He was a wonderful actor. He played the guitar. He wrote children's books and illustrated them. He was an illustrator. He was a little, on the quiet side. When he finished the Munsters, he did not want to have anything to do with the Munsters. Mm-hmm. Al was his best friend. He wouldn't even have his picture taken with Al. He wanted to totally lose his identity with the Munsters because he felt that he was portraying a cartoon character, and he wanted to be thought of as a serious actor.
Mm-hmm. I remember seeing him in an interview when somebody asked him about Herman Munster, and he said, Herman who? And he just totally bypassed the entire conversation.
Yet, as far as I was concerned, that was his Academy Award performance.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was so totally and completely different in every aspect than from what he was. That was truly great acting. But
yes,
he didn't think so. Of course, he was wonderful in my cousin Vinny.
Oh, yeah, but the judge, the Southern judge.
Yeah, but still in all, the Munsters, my feeling was that was just a real gem. And that's why it's been on, we're going on, I think now it's 48 years we've been on the air.
Continually.
And the sad part about it is we don't receive any residuals because we worked under the old union contracts, and that was 7 reruns per episode, and that was used up in the first 2 years. So for the last 46 years, we received 0.
Yeah.
But of course, that's why we're on so long, is because they don't have to pay us.
Yeah. A lot of actors, there's some chat going on in the chat, where a lot of the actors were afraid of being typecast because they had seen what had happened to actors like Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff and that. And
and that's what...
The minute they said makeup and you're going to be a monster, it was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't want to be 90 years old and putting on makeup trying to make a living, especially serious actors. Claude Rains managed to pull out from under it because Universal wanted to make him the new Lon Chaney Man of 1,000 Faces because of all the different work he had done, but he pulled out with Casablanca and Bette Davis movies, and he had that incredible voice. But a lot of actors were scared to death, whereas Al Lewis said, hey, it pays the bills. I don't care if they want to see me in the cape. That's fine. I'll put the cape on,
Yeah, but absolutely.
A lot of them were really afraid. Now, Yvonne DiCarlo said that it jump-started her career back up because it introduced her to a whole new group of people who had no idea she was an operatic singer.
Absolutely. They did. She was kind of hitting bottom at the time. She got the Munsters role. Financially, her husband, had fallen, stuntman, had fallen between the trains and how the West was won and lost his leg and I think an eye, and it was sad. And of course, we knew him; he would come on the set. And so they're having a hard time. He couldn't work. She wasn't working. And then when this came along, this just, this was the breath of fresh air that they really needed.
How was it let me ask, I've seen pictures and stills, you're crocheting, Yvonne DiCarlo, she's talking to someone who looks like, that's involved with the show, and yous are all just casually sitting there. What was the dynamics between everybody on the set?
Al and Fred used to tease Yvonne a lot. And she didn't like it.
Ooh.
Yvonne and I got along, and we would go to lunch, maybe once a week. But, I had to be very careful because if Yvonne had, had a fight with her husband or whatever, she'd come in storming on the set, throw her director's chair from away in front of her dressing room door and storm in, and of course then you'd know, okay, we don't say good morning, it might be 3:00 in the afternoon, and you just let her take the lead. And I can remember the first day that I was on the set, the first show, I was doing a shared scene with her in the entry hall. And the director said to me, Pat, come forward a little bit. You're not in the light. Come forward a little bit. And she turned to me and she said, let's get one thing straight, young lady. Don't you ever upstage me. Man, I jumped back in the dark. I didn't care if I did the rest of the series in the dark.
Wow.
But
yes.
I knew how to handle her.
Right.
And I would just, stay out of her way. I was never, controversial with her. She'd invite me to go to lunch, and I'd go to lunch. We had boys the same age. Mm-hmm. And so we did get along. Mm-hmm. In fact, no one on the set, none of us had ever a disagreement or an argument.
It's everybody thinks, oh my God, they're stars. And with all the shows now I've done almost the entire cast of Dark Shadows, the original series. I've had Michael Patrick Boatman on. I've had all kinds of actresses, Michelle Thomas. I have all kinds of people on. It is a rough way to make a living, and especially when you have children and they're depending on you to work for those kids. It has to get territorial at some point because even for beautiful women like yourself and Yvonne, I mean, and let's face it, she was drop dead gorgeous for a brunette. I mean,
yes, and their makeup, Al's and Grandpa's and Uncle Herman and Aunt Lily, their makeup was very, very hard on their skin.
Right.
It was, they were made up as though it was being shot in color.
Yeah.
And it was, it took Fred 2 hours to get into makeup. And then at night it took him an hour to get out of it before he could even go home. And it was very hard on the skin. It was hard.
Yeah.
And he wearing that big padded suit, which was underneath all that sweater and that jacket and everything, was all padded foam. And when it was warm and the stage was hot, the makeup men, when he wasn't in a scene, they'd be taking hair dryers on cold and, shooting it down his chest to try and cool him off.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask you, because Boris Karloff, his back was totally destroyed by playing Frankenstein. Hopefully by the time, Fred Gwynne got to the part of playing Herman, it was a lot more easy for lighter stuff. But he was 6'5", and then after the makeup and the platform shoes, he was something like 7 foot, 7'2", something like that.
7'3".
Yeah.
7'3".
How did that play on his back? Did he ever complain that it...
Oh, yeah, all the time. And the shoes were very, they were made and they were just like a big block.
Right.
So that he'd get that kind of trotting look. Mm-hmm. And then, it was hard. It was very hard.
It had to be hard. And
I was the lucky one.
Yes, you were ugly, though. That was the charm of it all.
Yes.
You were the dog-faced girl as far as they were concerned.
See, there were some perks about having a few lines.
Yeah.
Number one, I didn't have to get into makeup as early in the morning.
Okay.
Come in. That took a half hour. And at night, when we finished, sometimes we finished filming, 7, 8 o'clock at night, sometimes 9, 10, I could get in my car and drive home. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to get out of all my makeup. Right. They did, but I could do mine at home. So there were a few perks. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest thing for me is that it's just left me with so many wonderful memories.
Can you share some with us?
Oh, just the every day that we were filming, with Fred and Al and I would go to the commissary, the main dining room in the commissary, and have lunch. Mm-hmm. And we always sat at a round booth, and of course people would, look at me, or they'd say something, go, gosh, how can you sit there and eat with them? I mean, looking the way they do. Well, it just goes to show, when you get to know someone and like someone, it doesn't make any difference what they look like or wear.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It really doesn't, or what color they are or anything else. I mean, they were gray. I mean, it doesn't make any difference. I would sit there and we'd talk about what you do this weekend and you know, what are you going to do on your vacation? And I mean, just all sorts of stuff.
Let me ask you a question before we go to break again. A question was just asked. Did you ever, as a group, go out to a public event in costume? You know, did they have you guys doing that kind of stuff? Publicity stuff?
Not that much. Only if it was connected with, you know, a publicity thing, because it was too expensive to bring everyone, the makeup artist, in to make everyone up. Mm-hmm. You know, just for an appearance. I mean, we appeared together, but not in costume.
Right. Oh, you know, okay. Yeah, you went.
We had like we had a Golden Globe nominated. We were also nominated for an Emmy. We didn't win them, but we were nominated.
That's all that counts. Your name was in the group.
And so, you know, those functions, of course, we just, you know, went in evening clothes. But no, we didn't appear much together as a family.
Okay. We're going to go to break, and this song, I believe, is the theme from the show, The Munsters, and then during the third break, is it? Okay, and then we're going to go to the other break. The next break after that will be another Elvis Presley from a movie. We're going to pick up about the movie Easy Come, Easy Go, and The Man with Two Heads, that movie that you were in after that. When we come back, and our guest tonight is Pat Priest, who played the ugly duckling, very plain. She was never called ugly on the Munsters. They just said she was so plain, which is such a nice way to say what a dog. But she had a family that loved her, the Munsters, and they were devoted to each other, and I wish families would start watching that and learning how to be families like that instead of Roseanne and other shows that I could name that I absolutely would like to take a shoe and put it right through the TV watching. We're going to be right back. This is GameCon Radio, rocking your world tonight with Pat Priest.
Thanks for tuning in to GameCon Radio. This is DJ Trixie's with a little public service announcement. All of the DJs here at GameCon Radio work very hard to bring you the best tunes 24/7. All of the DJs volunteer their time for the radio station. Please show your appreciation for their hard work and log onto our website at GameConRadio.com and click on the DJ tip jar link. You can now tip your favorite DJ with a credit card or PayPal account. Thanks again for tuning in, and remember, GameCon Radio, we rock your game.
Yeah, running down a dream that never would come to me. Working on a mystery, going wherever.
Yes? Hi, I'm here for the New York Ghost Tour. Sorry, we're closed. But you can come back next week. Next week? Forget that. I'll just go check out another place. Trust me, there's no place half as interesting as ours, dear. That's so not true. What about the Shanley Hotel in Napanock? Once you've been to one haunted hotel, you've been to them all. Not like this place. The Shanley Hotel dates back to 1845, and since then it's been a hotspot for paranormal activity. Mysterious music, smells, whistling, doors opening, footsteps. Almost everything you can imagine has been experienced at that hotel. It's open to the public? Absolutely. Sal and Cindy, the owners of the hotel, welcome people for regular stays or investigations, and their rates are beyond reasonable. They even offer workshops and in-house psychics. How did you learn about this place? By visiting www.shanleyhotel.com. You can get history, investigation info, and much more. Thanks, I think I will. Just don't tell any of our customers. Your secret's safe with me. It's not like anyone can hear it.
Welcome back to Mo Banshee's Lair, Visionary Talk Radio on GameConRadio.com, rocking your game. Again, anybody who wants to find me can find me at my site, asylumsgate.com, spelt just like that, asylumsgate.com. And if you have show ideas, you have guest ideas, let me know there. It's free to join the show, the site. We are dedicated to unexplained phenomena, and it's one of the original sites on the internet dedicated to unexplained phenomena. Our guest tonight is Pat Priest, and we've been talking about, her career, which most people just remember her from the Munsters, which is the theme song we just played, but it's a very solid career of solid acting. And we were just talking about how it's so hard. It's a rough way to make a living. You have a story about the theme song.
I do. When I was I go to Texas every year. There is a couple that have built a home, an exact replica of the Munster house.
Oh, wow.
And they open it up every Halloween. It's not a scary house. They live in it. But it's an exact replica. The only thing different when they open it up to let people go through, they spray the cobwebs and everything on, and it's open for a couple nights. And then the proceeds that they get go to the Children's Hospital, which is great. But the last time I was there, the gal who owned the place said, "Do you want me?" I was talking about my cell phone, and she said, "Do you want me to put the Munsters song on your cell phone as your ring?" I said, "Oh, really? You can?" And she said, "Oh, sure. Give me your cell phone, and then tomorrow morning, when you come out, I'll give it to you, and we'll program it for the Munsters theme." All right, so now I have the Munsters theme song. I am driving back from Utah. I live in Idaho, and I'm driving back from Utah, and I stop in this little town, maybe 1,500 people, and I stop at the Subway because I'm hungry and I want to get a sandwich. And I'm standing in the line, and there's a line, and there's a lot of working guys, construction people in the line, and my cell phone goes off.
Oh, great.
And one guy turns to the other guy, and he says, "Oh, my God." He said, "I haven't heard that song in years."
Oh, that's awesome.
And I didn't say a word. Not a word.
You didn't sit there and say, "It's me, Marilyn"? Oh, man.
Now, if someone, and I've had times say, "Oh, you've got the Munsters theme song. How come you have the Munsters theme song?" Now, they didn't ask that, but I've had other people ask when they've heard it, "How come you have the Munsters theme?" And I'll say, "Well, because I was Marilyn Munster." "What? No. Oh, you're kidding me." Because, of course, now I'm an old lady, so it's hard to believe.
Oh, that's funny. My mother had passed away, and I was at the funeral parlor making arrangements for her. And my youngest son was over in Iraq. He was with a certain group of Marines in Iraq. And we had not heard from him in like 9 months because we weren't allowed, we just never heard from him, and he was always out in the field. So his girlfriend had gotten a hold of the Red Cross somehow, and they evidently had gotten a hold of him and saying, "Look, your grandmother, we're very close Irish family, and your grandmother passed away." And I'm sitting there making these arrangements with my brother across the table, and my mother, or rather my daughter, and here's this very young, funeral director, and all of a sudden, they're ooky and they're spooky, mysterious.
Oh, oh, great.
My brother's sitting there, and his mouth drops open, and I say, "Excuse me," and I take out my cell phone, and the guy says, "Did the Addams family just go off in a funeral parlor?" He started laughing. He thought it was hysterical. He says, "I will be telling this story to the day I die."
Oh,
and it turned out to be my son Andrew. You know,
oh my goodness!
And they had gotten a hold of him and said, "You need to call home. You need to call home right away." But that was just a riot, you know.
Oh, that is great. Well, you know what's interesting? How for both, you know, the Addams Family and the Munsters, how those theme songs, after almost 50 years, are still remembered.
Right. They're famous.
I mean, I don't know anybody's theme song now, but
no.
But those songs now are.
They are part of pop culture. When you go to Disney World and you go to the pop culture hotels, because we were there a couple of years ago, my daughter and I and my granddaughter, and they have like the pictures on the walls with collages of pop culture icons, and there's George Reeves, and there's the Addams Family, and there's the Munsters, and there's all these shows,
I know.
You know, Sky King, and all these Danny Thomas and everything. You're part of pop culture. You are part of history.
Well, I never would have ever dreamed that we would become cult.
Right.
And when we go out and do these shows, we are cult.
Yeah. You're gods.
I mean, it's funny.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. It's actually, I guess, it's humbling to know that you've transcended. What is it now? It's something like 50 years. It's
about 48, 49 years.
Yeah.
It was not. We filmed from 64 to 66. We only filmed 2 years. We did 70 episodes.
Yeah, it's amazing. So you got a gig on Easy Come, Easy Go with the Elvis Presley. This was before he married, what's her name, Priscilla. How did you get on that movie?
Well, Hal Wallace just called my agent and wanted me to come in for an interview, and this was after the Munsters, just shortly after, a few months after, and wanted me to come in and wanted to interview me and talk to me. And right then and there, I went in and talked to him, and he offered me the part. And in kind of typical of, and this is Paramount, kind of typical of Elvis Presley movie, there's always a good girl and the bad girl. And usually, the bad girl was always a brunette, and the good girl was always a blonde. But this time, the good girl was a brunette, and the bad girl was a blonde, and I played the bad girl. And it was great. And working with Elvis was wonderful, because when I worked with him, he was still shy, kind of quiet, religious, always on time, never gave anybody, there was no diva qualities in him at all. He had 10 guys, his group of guys that traveled with him, and they were always on the set, wonderful, terrific guys. And it was a great experience.
Did he travel with the Jordanaires? Because they are the backup music on his group, on his songs we're playing tonight.
Oh, and I don't know if they were. I don't think they were in the movie.
Yeah, he had like a gang, of guys he trusted implicitly that he.
Oh, and they all had a function. I mean, he had his music director, and he had his chef, and he had his the guy that ran his errands, and they all had a specific, job.
Mm-hmm. We were very fortunate last year to have one of the Imperials, and they backed him up on in Las Vegas as well. Joe Mascio was one of the backup singers for his Las Vegas thing, and he said Presley had a cutting sense of humor too. Joe had received a watch from him, and it was a gold watch or something. The entire group did, and his never worked. So he brought it. Somebody said, "Well, take it back and give it to Elvis, and he'll give you another one." So he walks up to Elvis Presley with this watch. It says, "Elvis, I because he did. Elvis helped him when his house was broken into while he was in Las Vegas, and Elvis flew him home and got a hold of his kids and said, 'Don't worry, I'm going to make this right. We're going to find these people that did this to you, and I'm going to replace anything that was stolen.'" So he had a heart of gold, but when Joe handed him the watch, he says, "Look, Joe, I just give them away. I don't fix them."
Good comeback. Interesting. I had with some friends that we stayed with in Las Vegas a couple of years ago on our way to California, because all my children live in California. And these friends knew Elvis's road manager, Joe Esposito, that, of course, I knew Joe because he was with the group of guys. And unbeknownst to me, he and his wife over for dinner. And I hadn't seen Joe in, 50 years.
That's wonderful.
And it was great. And he brought some like home movies that he'd shot on the set. And it was so much fun, just seeing him. And that's the only person that I've ever run into since then. But
how much interaction did you have with Elvis on it?
Well, I mean, I played obviously that. I had a lead, and but when we weren't on in the scene.
Right.
Then he was usually in his dressing room with the guys, and I was elsewhere.
And you were married, right?
And I was married, yeah.
Right, yeah. That's one thing that he seemed to never break those kind of boundaries with girls that were married on the set. I've never heard anyone say, "Oh, well, he got fresh with me."
Oh, no.
Never,
he was total.
He was always a gentleman, right?
Yeah. And one day we were sitting, we were chatting. We were sitting in the our director's chairs, waiting for a scene, and we were chatting. And I happened to tell him that, I was going to buy a new car, and I was looking for a car. And he said, "Well, I'll sell you my car." I said, "Oh, really? What kind of car do you have?" And he said, "Well, I've got a 1965 black Eldorado Cadillac convertible." And I said, "Oh, my gosh, Elvis, I probably wouldn't be able to afford that." He said, "No, I think you would." And I said, "Well, what would you sell it to me for?" And he says, "How about $3,000? I said, "Sold."
Wow.
And I bought his car, and I drove it for 2 years, and then I traded it in for a Pontiac.
And you've been kicking yourself ever since, right?
Oh yes, that was a retirement fund that I threw away. I didn't trade it in as Elvis's car. Nobody knew it was. It was just a black Cadillac convertible. I just traded it in.
And that goes right back to the part where we were talking earlier between the breaks and all. It's a living. This is how you make your living by acting.
Exactly.
And you're not thinking, "Oh boy, I better hold on to this little thing because someday someone's going to pay me a lot of money for this piece of crap that's on this movie set." Nobody ever thinks of that stuff.
And do you know what, Mo? I never, every Friday night when we come off the set, the end of the week, I'd toss my script in the garbage can there.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah, I never saved anything. I never had any Munster memorabilia.
Oh.
What little Munster memorabilia that I have, which is small, either fans have sent me or I have been out doing a show and have bought something from a vendor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I have. And then, of course, I have to find two because I've got two boys. And I have to keep things equal and fair.
Right.
So, but no, had I known, had any idea, I saved nothing.
I was saying to you earlier, Sarah Karloff was just on our show in December because of her father doing The Grinch, reading The Grinch and narrating it all. And she was saying that her father had gotten a award, and his agent had to get it. And when he finally did show up in his agent's office, because he was off living in England, and he came back and they handed it to him, he says, "Oh, it looks like a bloody doorstop. I don't want this." And it bounced around, and I says, "Please tell me at some point somebody got you that, and it fell back into your possession." She says, "I have it now." She says, "But they didn't save anything."
No.
Nobody did.
Nobody did then. No. Not at all.
If you go on like eBay and stuff, there are, because we're going to be doing a show about Claude Rains and David Scow, who wrote a book about him. But there's like postcards with, your magazine is in the mail that he sent to his daughter. $1,500 these people want for that little postcard. And I'm thinking, all these great actors and actresses who just looked at, like Fred Gwynne. I don't ever want to hear about Herman Munster again. It must have been like glass when somebody looked at him. It says, "I'll buy the shoes for $2 million," and then he looked and said, "I don't have them." It's like a kick in the pants, right? Oh yeah, absolutely. And the biggest collector of Munster memorabilia, I think, in probably the world, is Kevin Burns, who is a producer in Hollywood. He does a lot of documentaries,
A&E biographies.
Right.
And when Van Williams, who was the Green Hornet, was a neighbor of ours when we lived up in Sun Valley, Idaho, and Van said to me, and he was going out doing shows, and he was a friend of ours, and he said, "Pat, you should be doing these shows." And I said, "Well, really?" And he said, "Well, do you have any pictures?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, do you have any memorabilia?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, you know Kevin Burns, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I've known Kevin since he was about 12.
Wow.
And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, contact Kevin Burns, because he's the largest collector. Kevin can get you started with some pictures." And then he said, "I will connect you with a show promoter, and I'm going to be doing a show in, 3 or 4 months. And, we can fly out together out of Sun Valley." So, lo and behold, I called Kevin Burns, and Kevin said, I was in California, and he said, "Well, come on over and go through and look at a lot of my things." So I did, and he probably gave me close to 100 pictures.
Oh, wow.
Not all do I only use about 14, but he gave me a whole disc of them.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and it was, and of course, Kevin, I keep in touch with all the time.
Good, because you can be my liaison, and I could get him on the show. I would love to have him on my show. Oh my God, I am such a history freak. I love history, and I love his documentaries. They are just incredible. Nobody saved anything. a lot of like the makeup stuff that these, you know, like that were used for Herman, and they were perishable. Do you know what I mean? Like the prosthetics and things like that.
Yes.
They don't stand
No,
time.
they don't. The rubber, like Herman's head, that rubber would deteriorate over time.
I mean, it would be a life form of its own by now, you know? And so,
well, I think Kevin has Grandpa's cape, and he has a lot of Munster memorabilia stuff.
Because
he's just a big collector.
Yeah, and it's part of your childhood, you know? I mean, I was, you know, older, but, you know, still, my sister, I guess, was 5 years younger than me, and, I mean, Van Johnson, Jesus, who didn't want to shag him? He was beautiful, you know?
Yes.
I mean, he was absolutely gorgeous. Elvis Presley, getting back to that, because it is his birthday, he was very religious. He was a very shy guy.
Yes.
You know, any cut-ups that, you know, did he have anything that he would, you know, spring on anybody to break up tension? Did he seem to get tense during any of the films?
Oh, he'd kid with his crew, you know, with his guys.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd kid with the director and other people, yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was a very regular guy.
Yeah.
And I never saw him after that movie. Never did.
Yeah, never. Yeah, you know, I had an Elvis show, and the one, a friend of mine, a retired cop who does impersonations of him, Mark Reno, he is astounding when he does it too. And so anybody that really wants to check out Mark Reno, he has his own site for Elvis Presley. He said, I'll do a show, but don't ask me if he's dead. You know, and he says, because he's dead, okay? How did you feel? Where were you when he died?
Oh, wow. I was living in California at the time, completely shocked.
Yep.
Because, you know, I didn't know that part of him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know the drugs. I didn't know that, you know, I know he'd put on a little weight because you'd see him on television.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that side of him at all.
You didn't see that at all in the show?
Oh, no.
When you did
No. And none of his people. No. Nothing.
I know that he did suffer from something like colitis. And as the years went on, I mean, colitis is brutal. You know, I suffer from it, and
I've had it before.
Oh my God! You know, it's like somebody fed you Mr. Clean or something like that. It's rough, and you have no control over it when you go into one of those exacerbations and all. But I was driving through the Blue Ridge Mountains, I think in Virginia, and you know, the radio was playing, and all of a sudden they cut in and they said, you know, he was just found and he was pronounced dead, and cars literally pulled over to the side of the road. We all pulled over to the road and got out of our cars. Like, are you kidding me? You know, it was so unexpected.
Well, I think I was home, as I recall, you know, when I heard it, and I was just, as I say, I was shocked because it was not, and I'm glad that I knew and worked with him
before during
a good period of time that I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a shock, and it was, you know, I don't know. And this is off the cuff. You're not an expert. We're not going to, you know, write this up in, you know, Wall Street Journal or anything like that, but I often get the feeling that he wanted his movie to be an actor taken more seriously and get more serious parts and evolve that way. When you were working at him, did it appear that he was taking a great interest in how the process worked and maybe trying to
Yes, oh, definitely, yes. But in a very nice way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if he felt that maybe it'd be better if, let's try it this way or something, but always in a very, very nice way.
Yeah, I always felt that maybe he had ideas of backing away a little bit from the music and maybe moving into more serious parts with the movies. And I just think that the fans didn't want to let go of, shake, rattle, and roll. I don't
No,
know.
that was exactly it. And of course, then the movies, he had done so many, in that, I don't know what you call them. But
it's like a genre, right?
Yeah. And, with the pretty girls and the music and the dancing. And he'd run the gamut there. So then, of course, he became big in Vegas.
Right.
But it's almost like, and he's getting older and older, and he's getting older, putting on a little weight. Where do you go?
Right. Yeah.
And, that happens. And that happens with so many people, that are identified with just one particular thing.
Yeah.
And where do they go?
Right. And like I said, I'm going to be doing a show on Claude Rains. And at the end, he says, I'm nobody. He says, until somebody calls me with a role, I'm nobody. And then I go to work and I become somebody until the role is done. And then I come back and I'm nobody until somebody calls me again. And depression and that kind of identifying yourself with the role.
Yes, you could hardly wait to escape into being someone else.
Yeah, and as if nobody wants you unless you're somebody that you're not, That's got to be heartbreaking. We're going to go to break, the last break, and when we come back, we're going to talk, you're an antique, you got into antiquing, you got out of the business, and we're going to ask you why, because you were absolutely a beautiful lady. So when we come back, we'll talk about why you got out of the business and your antique hobby turned into your living, okay?
Okay.
Okay, we're going to be right back with Pat Priest for the last half hour of our show. This has been amazing. And we're going to tell you how you can contact Pat and everything. And she's going to be doing some conventions, so we're going to make sure that we have that information for you, too. We'll be right back. This is GameCon Radio, rocking your game.
You are listening to GameCon Radio.
You've got questions.
Who are we? Where do we come from?
Are we alone in the universe?
Is there life after death?
Where can I take a class and really learn about demonology? Now, get the answers. For a decade, the American Institute of Metaphysics has offered the ultimate in courses designed to serve as the foundation in your search for life's questions. The courses cover a variety of subject areas and consist of wide-ranging alternative sciences, theories, and philosophies. Each course comes complete with textbooks, work materials, and instructions. The courses allow you the freedom to pursue your own areas of interest according to your schedule. Whether it's UFOs, life after death, demonology, cryptozoology, and more, you've got questions. We've got answers. Visit www.instituteofmetaphysics.com or call 877-623-3241 and start your search now.
Welcome back to Mo Banty's Lair, Visionary Talk Radio on GameConRadio.com, rocking your world tonight. We've been having a delightful conversation with Pat Priest, who played Marilyn on the Munsters, but she has got an incredible roster of movies and television shows that she was in, and she's going to be in some monster like conventions where you can meet her. She'll sign pictures. She'll take pictures with you. And I'm going to be putting it, she's going to call me back after the show so that I can put all that info in on the recordings, and I'll make sure I post it around so anybody listening can go to my Podomatic, Mo Banshee Podomatic, or go to my Facebook, and they'll be able to find out where they are. But another person who is really good at getting that information is a friend of ours, Terry Soto, who is a convention organizer, and he's how Pat and I met. Thank you, Terry Soto.
Terry's wonderful. He's great. I did a show for him. It was great.
He is a wonderful guy. He is just a wonderful, wonderful man. And we will be posting that, but the one that you do remember, where is that?
Oh, it's the Monster Bash.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like the first week in July, or in Butler, Pennsylvania, just outside of Pittsburgh.
Okay. Butler, isn't that where that movie Night of the Living Dead, something like that, was made, somewhere up that way? Okay, and there's a couple, so we're going to be getting that information for everybody, and everybody go to these things and say hello for Mo, because these are wonderful, wonderful meetings. You get to meet these people. You had a really good career going, and then you left it. Why?
Well, do you know, there comes a point in life when quality of life means more than quantity. Mm-hmm. And I had reached that point. And I was married. I was single for 14 years, and after the Munsters, and then I remarried, and we moved to up to Sun Valley, Idaho. And of course, if you want to work in the business, you've got to be there, mm-hmm. and you've got to be available for interviews. And also, all the time, and when I was in California, because as you discussed before, there's the times when no money's coming in, you don't have anything. And I couldn't rely just upon acting, mm-hmm. For a living, because you never know when your next job's going to be. Right. And so I started buying houses and fixing them up, living in them, fixing them up, and then keeping them 2 years and then selling them. And I did that for, several years. In fact, I even did it a little bit in Idaho, and when we moved. And so that was always my, backup when I didn't have any work. Then I always had a house going somewhere that I was living in and fixing up and redoing. And then I got into, with my boys when they were fairly young, maybe 10, 12, got into antiques and buying them for me. And I liked everything that fell off the wagon train as they came across the plains.
Oh, okay.
I liked that period.
Okay.
Not the, the Louis the 15th and that. I liked the primitive American.
Yes.
And I started buying, and of course then I went to auctions, and my kids went to auctions with me. And I bought a lot of stuff and, of course, furnished my house. And then, like any collector, the word collection means many. I was buying, I was buying not because I needed it, but because I wanted it.
Right.
And so I started getting storage units because I had no place for them. And I'd buy the things that I liked, and I'd store them. So when we moved to Idaho, which was a horrendous move, because, of course, I had 3 storage units filled with antiques. And that, I couldn't incorporate. I had everything in my house was filled. So my sister and I decided to open up an antique store. And And we opened up the store, and we stocked it for 5 years with just our stuff. Mm-hmm. I never went to an auction. I never went to a garage sale. Just our stuff. We stocked it. And, of course, but then I had 6 storage units, and now I'm down to 1. I feel I've made a major accomplishment. And we had the business for 5 years. And then kind of typical with antiques, I was into the oak, and of course then they went from oak to pine to shabby chic. People's taste changed in Tuscany. And so we got out of the business. Mm-hmm. And so then, as I say, since then, my son is my oldest boy is an eBay auction agent.
Oh, wow.
And he liquidates estates and people's collections. He's very knowledgeable in antiques. He did a lot of selling of smaller items on eBay for me, and for several years. And so it was a wonderful experience, and I loved it. Now, I've sold out almost all my stuff, and I just told my kids, whatever you want, just come up and get it. Take it, because, things don't, I can't keep hanging on to stuff and hanging on to stuff,
Yeah.
You've got to get to a point where you can let go. Mm-hmm. And it does lighten up your life a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you were like this, but but you're talking about these storage units packed with stuff. Have you seen that show, Hoarders?
Oh, yes.
Holy
yes.
smoke!
I was never like that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's scary. My husband, he has a little bit of a memory issue, so I would leave a box or something on my table, and the next thing I know, like 3 days into it, he's like, when are you going to get rid of that box? It's been here for months. You're turning into a hoarder. I'm like, what are you kidding me? That's one box. You don't know what a hoarder is.
Oh, my children accuse me of that. And of course, then when I started, when we opened up the antique store and started selling all the stuff, it was just all stuff that I loved and I really liked. And then when we bought our home in Idaho, I said, and we were downsizing, and I said, what doesn't fit goes. Mm-hmm. And once you start getting rid of stuff, the first 1 or 2 things, it kind of, you got that pang of, oh, should I have done it? Should I? But once you do it, then, man, I'm off and running. My kids can have anything they want in the house.
Yeah, it's just getting to that first
place. Getting to where you can let go.
And you look at them, and one of the things in our house is, like, I have this one huge turkey roaster. And, of course, I use it once a year, Yes. I mean, because usually it's just me and Teddy or one of the boys or something, or the granddaughter. We don't have a dozen grandchildren. Our children are careful about procreating.
Yes,
thank
God.
Praise God, But he'll look at me and say, why didn't you get rid of that? Because it cost me $100. That's why I don't get rid of it. I'm going to use it once a year, and I'm not paying $100 a year to get
another one.
What are you out of a tree, And then he'll look and he'll say, well, why don't you get rid of this? You only use this once in a while. Yeah, I use that on Thanksgiving too. Or yeah, I use this on Easter. Yeah, I'm not getting rid of it. And that's the thing, though. Looking at what needs to go and what, if you use it, how often.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
And, there have been things that I have given, to my son to sell on eBay. And later I thought, oh, I could have used that.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
In the chat, they're talking and saying, well, hoarding stuff is one thing, but, these people have garbage in there. They've got Chinese things. and I mean, when you have dead cats and mice and stuff in there, it's time, something's wrong with you, man.
I agree.
So how much of it did you keep? That you said, okay, you can get this when you inherit it.
Yes, exactly. Well, I told my youngest boy, when he and my 2 grandchildren and his wife came up to visit us, I told him, I said, look around the house. If there's you can have anything you want. Mm-hmm. And you know what? They went and rented a U-Haul trailer. And took a trailer back filled with stuff.
I don't remember what movie it is, but
I laughed. And you know what? I probably couldn't tell you what they took now.
Yeah, the movie was the patriarch of the family passes away, so the one daughter-in-law is running around with these orange-colored dots that you stick on things, and finally somebody says, what are you doing? She says, well, I'm putting my claim on it.
Oh.
She's running around putting orange dots on everything she wants in the house, I don't have a lot of stuff anymore, so I mean, I have enough that I don't think anybody's going to kill themselves over, so,
Oh, no, and my oldest boy will sell most of my stuff on eBay anyway.
I tell you what, and it's a little bit, I guess macabre, but I went to the Dark Shadows Festival. I had no clue they were doing this kind of stuff. They have these big Dark Shadow festivals, and evidently they've been having them right along, and all. I got sidetracked by Vietnam, and all of that, so I lost track of that show back then. But anyway, Jonathan Frid's family had a table there. And I was looking, and a lot of them were, they had tapes with, written on it, Edward Hardy as Churchill. And I was looking at it, and I says, are these, his private tapes that he treasured, when he watched? And his nephew said, yeah. And I said, and remember you were saying you didn't keep any of the scripts? Evidently, Jonathan Frid kept every piece of paper he ever handled, but there were boxes of these scripts.
Oh my goodness!
Of course, that show ran 5 years, and all. And I looked at the kid and I said, they had one of his shirts there, a regular shirt that he might wear to go to the grocery store. And I says, doesn't anybody in your family want any of this? Because I'm looking at it as his personal possessions. I'm not looking at it as a star. I'm not looking at it as Barnabas Collins. He was a man. He was part of their family. And he looked at me. The kid says, no, nobody wants it. And I was like, and I felt obligated to rescue poor Edward Hardy out of the bin because he's a wonderful actor, and Jonathan Frid cared enough to take that him doing Churchill, which nobody can do it like him. And I'm thinking to myself, so I go back to the table, and my daughter Christine says, what do you got there? I says, tapes. She says, well, what are they? And I says, well, they were his. And she says, well, are they of him? I says, no, but he really liked them.
I love it.
Don't worry, John. I'll rescue them for you.
Great story.
Little ingrates, they're throwing your life away here for crying out loud. But I looked at the shirt and I thought to myself, somebody's going to buy, and it kind of reminded me of Charlie Brown's shirt. Do you remember that striped shirt, Charlie Brown, the cartoon?
Yes. Who
the hell is going to buy this shirt? I mean, the guy... 86 years old, and I mean, it had seen its share of being washed, and I was kind of like, oh, this is really bizarre, It's really
it's like Kevin Burns having Grandpa's cape.
Yeah, but that's a prop from a show, even if it was like a cane from Dark Shadows, and of course nobody's ever going to be able to afford to buy that because that was used in the show. I think he actually gave it to Johnny Depp, but I'm not sure. But I mean, these were more like personal things, like keys of his, and I'm like, this is really wow. This is odd. And I just kind of was like, ooh, I'm starting to crawl a little bit.
Well, you saved this collection.
Yes, you know, and it does. It makes you face your own mortality when you go to these things, you know.
Oh, sure does.
Your best, when you look back and you think of the body of work you've done, what is the one thing that you sit there and say, I am so proud of that? Oh, you've never been asked that, huh?
Well, no. Of course, you know, the Munsters was small bits every week. I don't know, probably the Elvis picture. Well, I liked when I played Betty White's sister. Mm-hmm. And, you know, because I had to do it with a Southern accent, and from Atlanta, from the Mary Tyler Moore show. Mm-hmm. That was pretty. I enjoyed that, and I liked.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I don't know.
You were interviewed once, and you said everybody in the business did something along soft porn or horror. You do have a horror, an actual horror movie that.
Yeah, I laughed when I said that about.
Yeah.
It seems like everybody, but of course I didn't have the body for that, nor did I have the mental frame of mind. So I did the horror film. Right. And I did, again, another cult film now called The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant. Uh-huh. And it was with Bruce Dern. He was my husband, and he was the scientist, and Casey Kasem, and
Albert Cole.
Albert Cole was a monster. John Barrymore.
Gary Kent, Ray Thorne, Jerry Patterson.
Barry Kent. Oh, yeah, he was another lab technician.
Yeah, it was. What was it? Casey Kasem. We all know him from the countdowns for the music, and also the original voice for Scooby Doo.
He was a big disc jockey too, also in L.A.
Bruce Dern. You know, it's hard to when we sit there and think of him in a movie like that, but originally The Thing with Two Heads with Ray Milland, you know, everybody backed themselves up with one horror movie. Was it fun?
It was different. Yeah, it was different. I was the only girl in the movie, and so everything happened to me. Uh-huh.
So did you scream a lot?
I screamed a lot, was attacked, was held prisoner and in a cave. I mean, it just, everything happened to me. And, and it was the monster, the one wanted to kill, and the other was the two heads. Right. And the other was the very, soft and quiet, kind of like a little boy.
Yeah, you had the one who was, a little backwards, and then he takes a criminal and puts that head on top of him, and then he turns it into a retarded criminal with, type of thing. I think every actress and actor had one of those in
well, and you know what? I call it my Ed Wood picture.
You're not Ed Wood type stuff, right? The old B movies,
Yeah, really.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much for coming on, and you did find my number, so...
I will. I'll call you and let you know, Mo.
Give me about 10 minutes after we hang up so that I have time to close out my show and everything.
Oh, well, yes, because I'll go try to find the information.
That's all. Don't kill yourself. You can call me tomorrow, too. That's
You know
okay.
what, Mo? I may have to call you tomorrow because I think it's too late for me to call my assistant.
That's right.
Right now.
I want to thank you so much for coming on. This was...
Oh, thank you. I've just thoroughly enjoyed the evening and chatting with you, and I hope your fans enjoy, everything we've been talking about. And I'll look forward to seeing you.
I hope that 2013 is wonderful for you. I hope that it's like one of the best years of your life.
I do, too, and thank you, Mo, for those good thoughts.
Okay. All you have to do is hang up, and I will get a hold. I'll find Terry. Terry will know how to get the show to you and everything. So I'll make sure that you get a copy of it. Okay? And
thank you so much. All right. Good night.
Good night. This was a wonderful show. I can't thank her enough for coming on. All you have to do is hang up when you're ready, Pat. Next week, a good friend of ours is coming back, Paula Kyle. She has a ranch that she started with her husband. She wrote a book, On the Edge of Unthinkable, about being dumped into the foster system, but it ended up saving her life and her sister's lives being in the foster system. And in a way of paying it back, she started a ranch for families to get some help, and they have horses there for animal therapy that you can pet and all of that. So she's coming back on the 15th next week. So I'm really over the moon to have Paula Kyle coming back. And then on January 22nd, David J. Scal is coming on. David is a biographer, an author. He's an expert and a critic on monster horror genre movies and actors and actresses. He's going to be here talking about legends like Claude Rains and the movies that have, a lot of us watched our whole lives. And I guess that we're going to talk about the direction that some of those, that genre is going in. And then on the 29th, we're going to be doing a show on H.P. Lovecraft, who pretty much started all the real horror genre books way back. So we've got a great January lined up. I want to thank everybody for listening in. I want to thank our guest, Pat Priest, and I want to wish you all a very happy 2013. God bless you. I hope it's everything you want. Send our link around. Let people know that we're here on GameCon Radio, and they can always find me on asylumsgate.com. And we'll see you next week. Same time, same station.
Somewhere over the rainbow, birds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow, while can
Thank you for visiting me at my lair. Mo Banshee's Lair is broadcast live on Tuesday evenings at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Pacific, and in the UK, 3 a.m. Wednesday mornings on www.gameconradio.com. You can listen to our recent recordings on Podomatic/Mo Banshee. You can contact me at www.asylumsgate.com. Again, thank you for listening. God bless you and yours, and have a very cool day.